there seems to be in the past year this idea that once we get out of this, you're going to have so many songs because all you've been doing is creating, and it'll be a great time for artists. And there was an article in the Washington Post a couple of months ago by the theater critic Peter Marks, and he talked about that. He can't wait to see what comes up from this. And my experience talking to songwriters has been that's not the case. So I guess the bigger issue here is it easy for you? How easy is it for you to write with under great emotional weight? Like not just this time, but in general, does emotional weight make it easier for you to write or harder?
I actually have had an extremely productive pandemic. Like right out of the gate, I started like writing every day, and I was really excited because I'm an isolator by nature. Yeah. And, I'm happy to, just have time by myself. And, so it was great. I do a Patreon thing where I do a new song every week. It's like pretty hardcore, prolific vibes. And I'm like 35 songs deep, in terms of like my backlog. I have like 10 really great weeks. I have 15 okay weeks, and then 10 weeks that are like passable. But I have a lot of backlog. I finished a book in quarantine. I learned how to mix trap music. Like I went on this YouTube hole of like figuring out how to do the sounds and what compressors to use and like that kind of stuff. Produce an album for a rap artist that's not done yet. But this being said, about 2 months ago, I hit a wall, and then just one day I woke up and didn't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I am not exactly sure why it happened, but the story most people have been telling is one of it being a very confusingly foggy time for the writing process, despite everybody's day being fully wide open. And I in the past 3 months, I've really experienced that. Now, in terms of the weight, this is a very different kind of weight because it's like the hidden enemy. So much of the horror of it is indistinct. And it's been very like I don't know, like I lived through 9/11, and that was like a moment of wait. This is like a surreal kind of, I know something's going on, but is something going on? And is this circulating in my community? Is it not circulating in my community? I don't know that I've felt it as scary, just confusing and baffling and so indistinct. I would say it's light, like unbearable lightness of being kind of light, rather than being a weight on me, for me.
So I was going to ask you about deadlines, and now I was thinking about how well, because of big expanses of time, artists not touring, is it easier to write under deadline, or do you get, or is it easier to write either under deadline or with large expanses of time? But now, as I'm hearing you say with the Patreon and with writing songs every week, that's a deadline. Right. So how has that been? Like, do you find that's been good for you to write? Does that impetus to I've got to create? Is that a good way to create, or do you typically need more distance to be able to create?
Oh, I love a deadline. I absolutely love it. And
you always have?
Yes, I think I always have. This is the Patreon thing is very much like a kind of 60s putting out singles vibe, maybe a 50s putting out singles, because you're just constantly trying to generate something that's going to get onto the proverbial radio. And so I've always been prolific, but this really there has stakes. Like, I got to come up with something that's going to get in front of people. It's not just a question of dashing something off. It's got to be ready. So it's the deadline is a huge part of it, but it's also just the fact that, like, I'm not just like writing a bunch of songs and then finding a purpose for them later. It's like it's going out. It's like out the door on Saturday.
Yeah, that's it. Some people, I think artists especially, find that deadline to be antithetical to the little creative process, but I can see how maybe doing that every week, right? You have no choice. You got to have it done.
Yeah.
And you've done 30, you said 35 of them.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing Patreon for a few years. So I've got like 260 odd total songs. I'm just saying, like, the backlog that I have.
Yeah, the backlog. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I got a 35 song backlog.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. How much writing do you do outside of songwriting, whether it's journaling? I know you said you wrote a book, but how much of that is a part of your daily creative routine?
Well, I haven't been doing great with it lately, but when I'm on the good foot, I get up and I do a dream journal every morning on an old IBM Selector typewriter. And then at night, I do kind of an end of the day journal on an Apple IIe vintage 1983 computer. There's no rhyme or reason to using these devices, but I just like them. But that being said, I have not been on the good foot for months. I haven't been doing it. Haven't been productive for a long ass time.
So what does the dream journal involve when you're doing it?
Just a recounting of the dream, every detail that I can remember. Oftentimes it's out of sequence because it's just as it comes back to me. But the more I dream journal, the more often I dream journal, the more I remember. It just has I think there's a quality of, like, flattering the unconscious, so it gives up more details if it knows you're paying attention to it.
Right. Do you mine those for song ideas ever?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mine everything. Pardon me. I'm going to walk while I let my dog inside. I mine everything for phrases.
Okay.
And so I'm not looking for themes per se. I'm just looking for little linguistic gems. And I keep sort of an ongoing list of those. And then when I'm in the process, I open up I just have pages on my phone, with a long list of them, and I just go through them and plug them into various places in the song.
So do you go to that list when you're in a rut, or is that like a standard part of the routine that every time you write a song, you're going to go to that list?
Oh, it's part of the routine. I mean, I don't always take something from the list, but yeah, I mean, I'm always going through it, especially like chorus ideas and, things that are like sort of linchpin phrases for the lyric. I often, chorus or not, I usually find on that list.
I'm fascinated by this because this is some songwriters. I actually had Brian Fallon. I interviewed him a couple of months ago, and Brian Fallon told me that if any songwriter ever tells you that they go back to their phones and look at the notes section, they're lying. He goes, I have hundreds of those. He goes, I've never touched them once. He goes, they're all lying. Now, I will say that I don't think any songwriter has agreed with him, but I thought it was hilarious. He goes, yes, I have hundreds of voice memos. I never go back. So, but it sounds like you do.
I do. I mean, I have a ton of fragments of guitar parts and melodic ideas and beats and stuff like that like they're just too many to get to.
Right.
In order to sort of get them in rotation, I have to finish them a little bit. But the stuff, the chord progressions I wrote into my phone 5 years ago, like those are never,
never see it. Yeah. Never. See the light of day.
Never see the light of day.
But I have heard the list thing a lot. So is this list organized at all? Like, are you organizing this by any kind of theme or topic or emotion? I imagine that's a long list after a while. So
no, it's just as they come up, like literally, like I'll go through a journal entry with a pencil and there'll be like 2 or 3 words here and there, that just sound good together, feel good together. And it's just a running list of these fragments.
And then it's at the end of the day, then that's kind of the end of the day journal where it just kind of like recounts the day's events. I think you said that's the one you do on the Apple.
Yeah, it's more the beginning of the day stuff, the dream journaling that I get stuff from, and stuff that I write just during the day that I'll, just like write on a piece of paper, whatever's close to me, or on my phone. Yeah. But the great thing about journaling on the Apple is it's never going to get out of that machine. Like there's no, like I save it on a literal like floppy disk, like a 5-inch floppy disk, and like it's never coming out of there. It's gonna, the ideal of journaling is a thing that is an exercise you don't necessarily go back to. It is absolutely well suited for that.
So you and I are the same age. So of a practical perspective, where are you getting these floppy disks from? Do they sell them anymore?
I got, when I bought the Apple IIe, it came with a big thing of like, like games and like different programs and stuff like that. So I've just been like formatting those disks and using those. Great. Yeah.
So just so I'm clear on this, that's the end of this is the stuff you write at the end of the day.
Apple IIe is end of the day. Yeah.
And do those things ever make it into your songs too? Or is that just kind of like a processing way for you?
That's more of a processing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just those soothing green letters on the screen. And,
how old is the Apple IIe?
83.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah. Yep.
So do you think it's important to create every day, even when maybe you're not feeling it, to kind of push through? Or are there days when you just say, I'm not feeling it, like creating, and whether it's music or writing or anything like that? How important is it to create every day for you?
Well, so I guess I'm sort of attached to the Protestant work ethic, which I think there's a big note of toxic masculinity in there. I mean, I think of, like I should write, shoulding on myself, have to write every day, got to do a thing every day. And I believe in that. And I believe in discipline, but I've gotten a little skeptical of, the any kind of artist that like what they underline is like, I work hard. That's my thing. I work hard. I guess I do work pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I try not to fetishize it. What I've been able to do lately is just practicing guitars, just putting up instrumentals and just like playing guitar solos and practicing and, working on my little filigree things that I can do. And I definitely will, in this time period where things feel so futile on some days, I definitely like being able to look back and say, I did this today. There was a thing I did today. Yeah.
A sense of accomplishment then.
Yeah. Something like that.
So I'm fascinated by the rituals of artists, things they have to have with them, time of day, place. So here's what I'm thinking. What if you would you be able to switch it up and do the end of the day journal on the typewriter and the dream journal on the Apple? Like I say that because I think there are certain things I need to have with me to be productive as a writer, like whether that's superstitious, like, do I need this pen? I write with this pen. Do I need to be in that chair? It probably doesn't make me more productive, but if I think that it does, that probably works. So yeah, I mean, how important is, I'm curious, like how important is that ritual, the ritualistic part of the process for you? Environment, time of day, place, things like that.
Well, I like working in the morning. I like, having that first cup of coffee and then just
Now
like
define morning, because morning for songwriters can be like noon. So.
more like 8:30. Like 8
Okay.
8:30
Okay.
is like a good time. I mean, I've been sleeping till 10 for a couple of months, which is like pasha-like behavior in my
Right.
book for me. Kind of scary actually. But yeah, like whenever I get up, just work when I'm up.
Yeah.
Just like first cup of coffee, at least like on the computer, like going through stuff, going through tracks I've been working on. Generally speaking, if I'm not active like immediately in the day, I'm not going to be active later in the day.
Yeah.
And I just kind of die out at like 2 p.m., like the 2 to 5 p.m. time period. And, it's sort of like if something significant hasn't been completed by then, it's just not going to happen.
Can you write for long stretches, or do you got to take breaks?
I think when I'm doing it right, like I forget to eat, forget to go to the bathroom,
I've heard that, yeah.
I'm just completely, what I've been writing for the past couple of years is raps. Like I started working with rappers and
Yeah.
just began to sort of envy them. And they're all freestylers, and they would come over and I'd put up a beat and they'd go for like half an hour and 15 minutes of it would be great.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. It literally takes me like 8 hours to write 16 bars, which they dash off in a minute and a half. But that's a very obsessive process. That's the kind of thing that I'm sitting there like scratching out one word, adding another. It's very meticulous work. So
Yeah.
that I can forget like time and place while I'm doing.
Is there a room that you like to write in, or does that not matter?
Oh, I have like a little studio room.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess my question earlier, what if we switched it up? Like, would that cause you, if I said to you, okay, Mike, you got to write that dream journal's got to go on the Apple IIe because the Selectric is going in the shop.
I mean, the white page is sort of filled with light and hope. So I think if I didn't have the typewriter, I'd go to a journal and handwrite it. And then the Apple IIe, like that glowing green 80s font, that really is a night vibe. So I think that I would feel profoundly unsettled if I had to, I love light.
Yeah.
So, I want to be somewhere where there's natural light coming into the window when I first wake up anyway. So I think on that level, it would feel creepy sitting in, on that dark little computer with a little flashing cursor.
Right. So very few songwriters have told me they use typewriters. So what is it about the typewriter? Is it hearing the smack of the keys? What is it about it that makes it so? Because the ones that do swear by it.
I love it. I mean, the Selectric 2 was like the stock office typewriter of the 70s and 80s. It's what I learned typing on in typing class in high school. It sort of like buzzes and hums.
Oh, right.
It just feels great. The sound of the bell is great. And there's just something about feeling those words coming out under your hands and feeling something concrete happening that is great. Just very, very different from, extremely different from writing on a laptop. That's for damn sure.
So do you ever write lyrics with a pen and paper, or are you strictly a typewriter guy?
I do. I mean, so I write, so like I'll free write on the Selector 2. Then I will have like a word processor file open on the computer next to Ableton. So I'll be writing like the lyrics on that. Then I like to actually type out the completed lyric on the typewriter before I record the first version of the vocal. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I've had one constant process that I've stuck to for many, many years. Oftentimes I'll write in a notebook, or or I've done the process where I write on the word processor, but then it has to be written in pen in the notebook before I sing it.
I could do an entire website dedicated to the pens, the brand of pens, the color of ink, and the paper that songwriters use. I have never heard a group so possessive in particular. I mean, some swear by it, only a certain type of ink, certain type of pen.
Sure.
Does that matter to you at all?
Well, I like a flowy pen. Right. Not like a ballpoint. Just feels really cheap to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got this amazing notebook in Italy made by Pinator, who, like it was one of those stores, like super chic stores that sold like a belt, a bag, a notebook, and like that was it. And each thing was under a spotlight and cost $1 million. Right. And I went over there. I was like, I want to get a dope notebook out of this experience. And then I didn't find one until like the third to last day, and it was like, holy shit! This, they wrapped it up and so meticulously in all this paper and put it in a box, and yeah, it's fabulous.
I would feel like that'd be more pressure. I'd be terrified to write in that thing. It's like I'd feel like it's better sitting on a shelf. So it's,
I love messing it up. I love turning it into a ratty, appears to have been thrown around a room, if not the garden, looking notebook.
Right. How about the role of movement? Do you ever get ideas? A lot of songwriters have told me, whether it's walking or hiking or biking or any exercising, or even, I interviewed Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam a couple of months ago, and he told me how it's really interesting. He has this theory about the cadence, how he said the cadence of the limbs actually contributes to, that cadence actually gives him song ideas, the swinging of the limbs.
Sure, I can see that.
Yeah. So, and a lot of songwriters I'm not a swimmer, but they swear by swimming. Swimming is a way, the rhythm gives them ideas. So does that ever happen to you at all? Like whether it's being outside in some form of movement ever generate song ideas?
I think I often come up with great little nuggets of ideas when I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
When I'm completely not in the songwriting process. So it's not that I'm moving or that I'm outside or whatever. It's just that I'm completely divorced in the moment from writing songs, like I don't know, like doing some sort of necessary physical labor, or driving, or something like that, something where I'm not where I'm supposed to be focused on something else, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah, I've heard gardening tends to be a popular activity that songwriters get ideas. And who's the guy that writes Dilbert? Scott Adams. I remember years ago, he wrote an art, not that long ago, but in the Wall Street Journal about, he says, boredom is a necessary component of the creative process. I think, like you're saying, it's that when we try to think of these things, like when I write, I think my greatest, what I would consider to be my great lines, have never ever come to me when I'm about to write them. They're always
right.
Doing something else.
Sure.
Yeah. And so do you revise a lot of your lyrics? How important is revision when it comes time to writing lyrics?
Well, I feel like I'll write a song, and then a poetry teacher of mine once would say about a poem, he'd be like, that poem is a life support system for one killer line. And so try and like look at the song and be like, okay, there's one good thing in here, and I can take that out and plug it into a different song. So oftentimes my songs will be like amalgams of 3 or 4 different songs. You know, and as the months go by, you know, they'll kind of congeal into more compact forms.
Are you willing to sacrifice when it comes time to revising? Are you willing to sacrifice meaning in a line for the sake of melody? You know, which reigns supreme? Is it the melody? Are you willing to change a word if it means changing the meaning for the sake of the melody?
I feel like I've more often made a difficult decision to go with the meaning than, you know,
really?
like it's like more often a song is outside of what I had intended it to be, and then it shows itself as being, you know, a song about something other than what I thought it was about. Or oftentimes like showing insecurity in a song is you know, often like the song is just going towards a vulnerable place, and I just don't want to be in a vulnerable place. But I mean, in general, I think the sound, you know, and very much the sound of the words is reigns supreme. So I would not have. I mean, sometimes it's difficult, but I don't have a problem doing that. Don't have a problem editing with a mind for you know, making the melody better.
So let's end with this, because songwriters are, for the most part, voracious readers. And you already mentioned poetry. I could probably count on the number of, on one hand, the number of songwriters I've interviewed who read poetry. When I interviewed Daniel Lanois last week, I was so happy because he and I talked about Yeats. And I was like, no songwriter has ever mentioned Yeats. And I don't know, it always amazes me that songwriters don't read poetry at all. But anyway, I guess, what are your reading habits like? How much do you get to read? Who are some of your favorite authors, like regardless of genre?
Well, I mean, my favorite books are a lot of poetry books.
Yeah.
The Great Fires by Jack Gilbert. I'm reading David Ignatov right now. I've never read him before. And when I read poetry, like I read one poem a day, basically, because the more you read, the less you get out of it with poetry.
Yeah.
You need to, like, you know, have some pretty extreme focus. But I mean, I love John Cheever. I love Carson McCullers.
Yeah.
I love Borges. Borges is my dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything and Nothing. Love that.
Now, I love Carson McCullers too, but let's talk about her. So why? Yeah. What about that writing appeals? What did you like?
Well, I can, the short story Sucker is my favorite of hers, because it's so fucking creepy. And it turns from this you know, kind of, you know, sibling drama that's sort of heartbreaking into like this scary like murder story. And I love the character of John Henry, the little kid who dies of encephalitis in a Member of the Wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry if I just spoiled Member of the Wedding for somebody.
No. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've read that. Yeah. I mean, what have I read? I mean, I've read stuff of hers. I just don't, I love her, but I don't hear her name very often. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, no, she's great.
Yeah. So the poets then, does the poetry ever influence your songwriting, or is that separate?
The poetry actually influences the prose more.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not. Because I mean, poetry is very much based in meaning, whereas the songs are very much based in sound. And it's really the sound of the words and what the sounds of the words evoke, much more than trying to get a feeling down on the page, which I think is the essential nature of poetry.
It seems like the novelists that are always come up with songwriters, Cormac McCarthy, Bukowski, and Vonnegut.
Yep.
Those are the big three. And Raymond Carver comes up too. Yeah. I mean, because of the word economy, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean,
sure. And the fact that, like, in a song, you really can sort of like establish a scenario, establish a situation, and then have some sort of elliptical denouement. You can't really, like, I mean, I not a lot of songwriters can really tell a point A to point B story. And that's very Carver, it sort of drifts into the mist at the end of the story.
Yeah. And the wordplay too, and people like Vonnegut, right? I mean, it's just, I mean, all those. So any other poets? I love talking about poetry. I just don't get to talk about it with songwriters that often, but anyone, I think you mentioned a couple, but any other favorites?
Well, Sylvia Plath.
Yeah.
Alan Dugan is my guy. Okay. Love Alan Dugan. Borges, who I mentioned, is absolutely huge for me. Paul Celan, I love.
Yeah.
Joan Murray, I like. Oh, I mean, of course. But then there's a lot of playwrights that are meaningful to me as well. Like David Mamet's very meaningful to me.
Now we're talking, because thank you. I've done the site for 10 years and you're the first songwriter. So my PhD is in 20th century American theater. So thank you very much. So this is like this is a watershed moment for me. 10 years I've done this freaking site, and you're the first one I think I can talk about playwrights with.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you. Well, Mamet makes sense. I mean, right. I mean, just the dialogue. I mean, I can see how that would be, how songwriters would have but who else? So what other playwrights do you like?
Well, I love Chekhov.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time reading Sam Shepard when I was a kid.
Sam Shepard, I think, is just amazing. And if you like him, he wrote 2 novels in the past, like by the 5 years before he before he passed away, that if you like his plays, you'll love his novels. It's the same stuff. It's the same language. It's the same characters. Wow. It's like Barry Child in long form.
The guy I love is Mamet. Mamet is my shit. Yeah. My favorite thing of his is this very kind of minor companion piece to Sexual Perversity in Chicago called The Duck Variations.
Yes.
And I just remember, I'd never heard of David Mamet. It was like 16 and it got passed out in a class, and, just 2 students reading these parts. It's just so wonderful. The repetition of the language and the use of punctuation. So yeah, that guy means so much to me.